Today we've got Siim, whose new book, The Longevity Leap, is a deep dive into the science of longevity and how we can add healthy years to our lifespan. So with that, we're going to do a deep dive into Siim, his backstory, and then as much as we can cover in the book. So welcome, Siim.
Yeah, my pleasure, and I'm happy to be here.
Cool. So there aren't that many interviews of you on YouTube, or at least I didn't see very many. So I think it's important that we go back and look at the evolution of the process, because where you started on YouTube is almost a completely different place, although in this health and fitness sphere. So, but I want to go even further back. So, as a kid, active into health and fitness. So, what are your earliest memories of being into the active and fitness lifestyle?
Yeah, so my earliest memories probably have to do with, in terms of fitness, have to do with doing push-ups with my dad when we were kids, something like 4 or 5 years old. Like in the evening, we would do like a push-up contest of how many push-ups we could do, and like we were amazed. Wow, my dad can do like a bunch of push-ups. So that was like my earliest introduction of, hey, I want to be kind of strong as well. I want to do different kind of calisthenic exercises and be strong and healthy. As a child, I was growing up in the countryside, so I was always doing something like physical, mostly playing outside and playing soccer with my brother, or we also did like this, medieval battles with each other. We like fight each other with sticks and swords, that kind of thing, climbing trees. Of course, we did some like physical labor as well, like carrying some stones or doing hay. Like we spent our summers in our great aunt's place where you do the hay traditional way, where you like rake the hay, you throw it in the barn, you stump it. So it's kind of the old school method. And yeah, also just doing pull-ups on the tree on a branch when I was like, I guess something like 8 or 9 years old. I remember, in the evening again, like trying to do like a few sets of pull-ups. And yeah, I mean, those were the kind of early days of me trying exercise. I wasn't particularly like, at least with cardio or stuff, I wasn't like very athletic. I think I was in good condition and fitness with calisthenics. I was in school, I was like the best in calisthenics out of my class, but not for cardio. So yeah, I was always kind of mediocre with cardiovascular exercise. And yeah, in high school, got into more like strength training. And yeah, since then, as an adult, started to learn more about all the different topics. Primarily in the beginning, learning about, yeah, how to build muscle and lose fat through like a gym perspective. And gradually, yeah, learning more about different aspects of health and longevity as well.
All right, wait. So were there specific people besides your dad who you kind of had as fitness role models when you were a kid or a teenager?
Um, yeah, like I guess yeah, my dad was a role model for the kind of calisthenics side. But overall, like fitness, I didn't have like any particular role models. Besides that, you know, I did play soccer a little bit, but I wasn't, yeah, like into like sports in that sense. So I was kind of I just my main motivation was to just, yeah, kind of I thought it was just, something that you would want to do as a good human being to like get strong and be kind of athletic. So it's this kind of the Socrates quote. It goes something along the lines that it will be a shame for you to grow old without knowing what your body is capable. So yeah, I think that was maybe one of the quotes as well that has kind of kept me motivated as like a teenager.
So it was the idea of fitness, not necessarily seeing people who were fit and while you were at a young age saying, I want to emulate that path. Like even sports athletes, like soccer players, there weren't any soccer players that you saw and you were like, wow, I want to be fit and I want to be fit like that person. So
Mm. I don't think so. Like, of course, I did watch soccer as a child, the World Cup or the EU Cup. So like Ronaldo and Luis Figo, or those like Zidane, like these old school soccer players back then. So of course they were like inspirational. Like you were as a kid, yeah, like I had a Ronaldo shirt and stuff like that. But I never like, saw them as like role models for fitness. Like, I was just, hey, I want to play good. I want to play soccer well. But I was never like interested in it as a, even not even a career thing or anything like that. Not to mention the kind of a health and fitness component.
Interesting. So how about now? Are there people in their, 70s, 80s, 90s? I see you posting like bodybuilder pictures on X, and you're like, oh, this is kind of like the standard of what we can be at 70 and 80 years old. Are there people that
Mm.
stand out that
Yeah, like, I post, yeah, these different kind of videos or clips of older people who are in great physical condition and good health. You have like these 90-year-old gymnasts and 90-year-old rowing champions as and like pole vaulting champions. So yeah, of course, now being into longevity is those people would be like role models of, okay, when I am, in a few decades, this is what I would like to like emulate in a sense. Um, but younger people, like, yeah, I don't think I look in towards my peers for like inspiration in that sense. Like, I'm kind of past the phase of trying to like do bodybuilding as like aesthetic thing. Like I did it early in my early 20s. I'm kind of past that phase. Currently, I'm mostly interested in like, of course, maintaining decent physique because it's a good sign of like health and good body composition. But that's pretty much it. Maybe like, I don't know. I don't have any specific names that kind of come to mind. And the most inspirational or like impressive of these people, don't have any like social media or something. They're this kind of random grandpa in China that does like pull-ups at 90 years old.
Yeah, I have many, which, so it's almost a completely different path. I mean, like Schwarzenegger, when I was a kid,
Mm.
Schwarzenegger was like big and huge. And then there were other people, Clarence Bass, John Taylor. Some of these have died, some of these people have died. But yeah, you get to a certain point where it's not about emulating anymore. And then it's almost like people are emulating you because you meet or you get to know those people and it's not as impressive as you thought. And then you think, wow, I can do better, right? So do you have aspirations where you'll be that 70, 80, 90-year-old plus, still lean and ripped, avoided all age-related decline, do you have aspirations? Is that part of the plan?
Yeah, well, like I definitely don't plan to stop taking care of my health and stop exercising. So I think it's gonna be just a natural byproduct of staying consistent with good diet and good exercise for the next few decades. So I don't think it's, these people they're not like particularly like, let's say, unique in that sense. They've just, implemented exercise and they've stayed consistent with it for decades. And a lot of them don't even exercise before the age of something like 70, and then they start. So yeah, I think it kind of comes down to staying consistent with it. So I definitely, I'm not gonna try to like, a lot of these people like do like marathons and those kind of things, like compete in this like 100-year-old sports events. Like I don't have any like desire to do that. Like, I think it would be cool, yeah, like to be the world record holder for some sort of a sprint event, like 400-meter dash or something like that. But I'm not like, super drawn to that. So I guess, yeah, like I don't need any like achievement besides just working on my own like health and longevity when I'm like older.
So I hear that, but I also have some doubt because so it's just naturally competitive, right? If you see Brian has a speed of aging at whatever it is, 0.66, right? There's got to be some small amount, of you that's like, well, I can beat that, right? So now fast forward, and then you see people in whether it's my generation or even your generation, maybe a generation older than me, like Dave Pasco, right? So if
Mm.
some of those generations start to actually compete in some of these masters competitions, and there's got to be a part of you that's like, yeah, I can do that, right? And then before you know
Sure.
it, land is the
Yeah, we'll see. Like, but I'm not like doing that for that reason. So if I if I have, reached 100 years of age or even like 80 or 90, then oh, but yeah, I mean, like the older you get, the less competition there is. So if you're like a 110-year-old sprinter, then there's probably no one else out there to compete with you, so you instantly like win. So the actual competition is like, kind of staying alive for longer.
Definitely, definitely. All right. So your evolution in this field, I mean, I think you started off in the keto crowd and very low carb. And then so how did you, and especially when you started making YouTube videos, I think that was about 7 years ago. You started mostly on that journey and with autophagy and talking about metabolic flexibility. So like what was your thought process at that time? And then how is it the same or how has it changed since then?
Yeah, like my first videos was, yeah, in like 2016, so very like up there like 8 years ago, but it was like very small in the beginning. And the first videos were about actually something like personal development and that kind of thing. Like that was what I was into. So I wasn't like into diets or longevity back then. And the first videos were about like I did like the 7 habits of highly effective people and stoicism and those kind of videos. And then I started to make a little bit about nutrition and exercise as well. So this kind of yeah, more like maybe like a Tim Ferriss approach that you talk about productivity, you also talk about diet and blood work and those kind of things. So, yeah, and yeah, like the back then I was doing, mostly intermittent fasting was the first thing that I did. So I did like 16 and 8, 1 meal a day, warrior diet, and different kinds of fasting. And that gained a little bit more traction, those videos. I also experimented with like a ketogenic diet for a few years, and I did make videos about that as well. Then I guess like, the reason I did a keto diet was I wanted to kind of try it out. I heard some things about it, wanted to experiment with it, shared my experience as well as I shared like content about it. So back then there was not a lot. It's very new. Like not a lot of people were actually talking about these topics. So they got like just gained attraction in the YouTube like search engine. So that's where I kind of grew my first audience, maybe like 1,000 people or something. And then it kind of grew from there, doing a mix of content about keto, doing a mix of content about intermittent fasting and autophagy and those things. So yeah, but eventually I kind of changed my diet, introduced more carbohydrates, doing different types of carbohydrate cycling, etc. I mean, I've always just been like experimenting with the different diets and the different ways of eating, and my content has been, yeah, like about that. You know, it hasn't been like a journey that I'm doing like some sort of vlogs. My videos have always been somewhat like educational. So I pick a certain topic, how to increase autophagy, and then I make a video about it, and it kind of gains popularity because no one else is really talking about it. So back in 2018, like no one was talking about mTOR and autophagy. Like I was one of the first ones to actually create, I guess, like a spot on the algorithm with those kind of keywords. And yeah, I was kind of early in that space.
So then you experimented with keto and playing with carbohydrates. I'm guessing you played around with protein intake.
Mm,
So how has that journey evolved?
mm,
Like what works best, what, strengths and weaknesses, independent of blood testing, like just
mm.
right, because you obviously you changed from the keto to the higher carbs uh, without, I don't know if that was a blood
Yeah.
test based thing or what was the mindset in changing it up.
Yeah, well, before keto, I was high carb. So like when I was 18 years old, up to like 20 years old, I was, eating a higher carb diet, and then I switched keto for a few days, and then I switched back. So the reason I switched back was because, let's be honest, like the biggest motivating factor was like strength training. So eating more carbs just makes me stronger, and I build more muscle more easily. And I also noticed that my like fat loss is also easier, like actually become leaner if I eat more carbohydrates. And yeah, my metabolic rate is higher and those kind of things. So it was just, I'm gonna try this thing, low carb keto for a little bit. And even during that time, I was doing some aspects of carb cycling, so it was never like completely strict keto. It was actually more like a low carb diet, so it didn't meet the actual keto specifications of getting less than 50 grams of carbs per day. So I was always eating something like 100 grams or something like that, plus some aspects of carb cycling. And then I went back to it because, yeah, I wanted to maximize my like potential for muscle strength and muscle growth. So yeah, I wasn't like reaching that with like a low carb diet. And yeah, before, and it kind of, the reason I made the change was that I remembered, you know, okay, before keto, I was doing the high carb version and it was working great. So like, why change it? I'll go back to it. In terms of blood work, then, I mean, there are some like just simple expectations or like clear expectations that you can expect from changing the diet. You know, if you're on low carb keto version diet, your cholesterol typically is going to be higher, your blood sugar might be slightly lower, and maybe triglycerides are slightly lower. And on a lower fat, lower saturated fat, higher carb diet, your cholesterol is typically lower. My blood sugar is pretty much the same, and my triglycerides are also like pretty much the same. So it also made sense from like a rational perspective of, okay, it's kind of better for my blood work as a like a whole.
But only on a small segment, because I find that a lot in the keto crowd only focus on metabolic health, which is what you
Mm.
mentioned, glucose and lipids. So at some point, I don't know, have you done the experiment? Well, I guess we can take a deeper dive into diet, right? So have you done any experimentation with, the keto, even at 100 grams of carbs per day versus the higher carb? And when you say higher carb, just to, illustrate for people who may not be familiar, I'm guessing this is probably whole food based. This isn't like
Mm.
cookies and cakes, because I think
Mhm.
when most people hear high carb, it's like, oh, you're eating donuts and ice cream,
Right.
right? Yeah. So have you done any experimentation comparing the, 100 grams per day or less versus the relatively higher carb and then effects on biomarkers
You mean,
besides metabolic health, kidney, liver, inflammation?
yeah, I mean, like I did track my blood markers, not as like regularly back in the day when I was doing keto, uh, compared to now. And, I mean, I didn't have any like other real changes to my blood work except for the cholesterol. Like my metabolic health is very good right now. It was pretty much like, or my insulin sensitivity was also like very similar to what it is right now. So there was no like change. It didn't worsen like my glucose or insulin levels going from, yeah, like 100 grams carbs to now something like 200 to 300 grams carbs per day. So yeah,
So
I think
about the
that,
same, no change. You can basically thrive right now on any diet, metabolically flexible.
yeah, and I think that the biggest thing is that, I exercise and I also maintain like a good body fat percentage year round. So, any diet you can see improvements if you just lose a little bit of weight and you exercise regularly, and vice versa. Like any diet, you can see worse results. You can see blood markers getting worse if you're gaining weight and you're being sedentary. So yeah, I think, my personal belief about diet is that, yeah, a lot of people, get very defensive about diet, but the truth is that it only moves the needle, a little bit. It's not usually the biggest determining factor. Of course, there are some, yeah, minor or individual biomarkers that tend to change, but like all of them work in the context of the calorie intake and your like body fat percentage. So if you're eating a keto diet but you're overweight, then your insulin sensitivity is still gonna be bad. And then the same with a high carb diet. You know, you could eat a bunch of carbs and your insulin could be very low, and your blood sugar could be very low or normal, because you're not overeating and you're exercising at the same time. So yeah, I think many people, you know, just focus on the diet, but they're not focusing on the blood markers. So the blood markers at the end of the day are what actually, mediate any potential risk from what you're eating, and what actually drive these chronic diseases that end up killing people.
So let's assume, yeah, I agree 100%. So let's assume you've got those two diets, right? Lower carb, keto-ish, 100 grams, 50 grams, whatever, and then the relatively higher carb, right? So, and again, not 80% carbs, even something more reasonable, 40-ish percent, 50%, somewhere in that ballpark, right? So
Mm.
what do you think about short-term versus long-term potential effects, where right now, in your case, you're metabolically flexible. Your blood biomarker data is basically about the same on both diets. But, in order to properly test which diet may be optimal, you need a twin, a genetically identical
Yeah.
twin. And you're on your diet and he's on on the other diet, right? So who would, and assuming all the other factors are the same, sleep, exercise, intensity, duration, frequency, all that, right? You'd have to fast forward 20, 30, 50 years to see, all right, which was truly best based on genetic background. And there's just no way to know right now, right? So what
Mm.
are your thoughts on although metabolically flexible right now, and biomarkers mostly the same right now, could there be a time when, you know, maybe when you're 50 or 60 or I don't know, 40, whenever the case may be, now the biomarkers start to look a little bit off, and now you've got to maybe make some changes to whether it's diet or supplements, even changing maybe the exercise up, to try to move the needle back towards a more youthful state.
Mm. Yeah, like of course, I'm not married to any particular diet. Like, I can eat many different foods. I'm not like, yeah, super like this foodie person. Like I can eat beans, I can eat eggs, I can eat sweet potatoes, I can eat rice, vegetables, fish, meat. So yeah, like I'm not like a huge food fan in that sense. Yeah, of course, I would always like adjust my food and the macros, etc., based on what my health is currently, and also like my goals for the moment, and what I'm doing. So yeah, if I'm not exercising that much, I'm generally reducing my carbohydrate intake. But yeah, if we don't have, yeah, like the perfect experiment where you have the twin doing the opposite diet for 2 decades, but at least based on observational data, then there's nothing that would indicate that carbohydrate intake of something like 40 to 50% would increase your mortality. That's actually typically linked to the lowest risk. So yeah, like if you're eating a lot of carbs, like 80% of your calories is carbs, then that probably is not the best solution. But there's nothing that would indicate that a moderate carb intake would be somehow harmful either. And yeah, I mean, Japanese people eat rice, Mediterranean people eat pasta and stuff. So yeah, I think a lot of people might be afraid of carbs because of, in the past few decades ago, everyone was afraid of fat. But I think that like the pendulum has shifted, that now is everyone is afraid of carbs. But whole food carbs um, aren't really like bad in my opinion.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be carbohydrate. It could be anything. It could be, do you need more omega-6 now? Not omega-6, omega-3. Do you
Mm,
need more, certain types of protein and less of other types of protein? Just
yeah,
think people, there's so many in this space that are married to the ideology of it. And even like, without thinking of the broader context, rather than, as you said, what do the biomarkers show? And then how can I use, whether it's diet, supplements, exercise, sleep, whatever, to try to move the needle, right? So
yeah, and your omega-3, like, yeah, if you have a biomarker that connects with some foods or some macros, then yeah, that's a very good thing to keep track of. So like omega-3s are the best example. You have a specific biomarker, omega-3 index, that actually, yeah, reflects your omega-3 status in red blood cells. So you can use that to gauge, okay, are you getting enough omega-3s? And vice versa with some other like lipids and glucose markers, etc. Certain foods affect those markers, so you can adjust your food intake based on, okay, is your some of these markers getting out of range?
So I would add one caveat to that. That's one half of the equation, right? So you'd expect that an increase in dietary intake for omega-3 should increase, whether it's red blood cell or plasma levels of EPA and DHA. But if they're not, knowing that inflammation increases during aging, and inflammation is a driver of degradation for EPA and DHA, just as one example, they can be metabolized
Mm,
into all sorts of other metabolites. If your omega-3 intake is high, but blood levels are low, then that suggests that it's not a problem that can be fixed solely from more intake of omega-3. Like that's a good example of that too is like taurine. So I don't
mm,
specifically supplement with taurine, and I do eat fish. But when I make a taurine video, people are all over the comments talking about, oh, I supplement with taurine, but that's only
mm.
one half of the equation. It can be degraded and metabolized into other stuff. And unfortunately,
Okay.
most people aren't measuring that stuff, right? So um, yeah, only focusing on the one half, I think, the dietary intake side. Got to look at the biomarkers, right?
Mm,
So
yeah.
another, so let's dig down into details. Like, how carefully do you pay attention to diet, or maybe not at all right now, or it's just or even calories? Do you track any of that stuff, or it's just eat as much as you want and just exercise? So what's your, like, in terms of the diet prescription in your case? Uh, how can we define that?
Yeah, like I don't count calories, I don't like weigh my foods, I don't count the macros either. I'm mostly looking at, yeah, my body composition and body fatness. So I eat until I'm full, and on some days I'll eat more, on some other days I'll eat less. And if I see that, okay, I'm starting to gain a bit too much body fat, then I'll just, for a few days or a week or something, I'll eat less. And vice versa, if I'm getting too lean, getting too skinny, or getting too weak at the gym or something, feeling tired, then I'll increase the calorie intake. So yeah, I think, the problem is, yeah, like even if they're aware, so like there's no way to know that, okay, this optimal split of this percentage of protein, this percentage of carbs, this percentage of fats, there's no way to know that that will be optimal for every day for the rest of your life, kind of. So much rather, yeah, I tend to just look at like the blood markers and the body composition and seeing, okay, is my muscle mass decreasing? Then I need to probably make sure that I get enough protein and ensure like that I do resistance training regularly, and the same with like blood markers as well. That, okay, I might be eating too many fats or carbs or protein or whatever the case may be. So yeah, I don't track anything. I kind of eat to satiety. I do like prioritize protein in my meals, and I have for some days, maybe every few months or so, I'll track protein and maybe track calories as well, and then I'll see, okay, this is approximately how much my average meal has, the approximate amount of fats and proteins and calories. So for the rest of them, a few months, I'm just gonna like follow that kind of a similar pattern, and then it's gonna fluctuate obviously every day, plus and minus 5 to 10%.
So how would you break it down? Like protein, carbs, fat, fiber, based on those, times you do track?
Yeah, so like my average protein intake is something I've been reducing my protein intake slightly over the last year. Before that, I was consuming at least 150 grams of protein, and nowadays I'm eating like 130, maybe 40 grams of protein on average per day. My total calories on average are something like, again, depends if I'm trying to lose weight or kind of bulk up a little bit, but on average it's something between 2,000 to 2,500. And maybe on some days it goes up to 2,800 if yeah, I add like a bit more olive oil or something like that. Carbohydrate intake is on average, yeah, 200 to 300 grams. Fat intake would be something like 70, 80 grams, maybe even 100 grams in some cases. But yeah, I'm not on like a low fat diet, but I'm not like on a super high fat diet either. And fiber, I don't count fiber specifically, but all the carbohydrates come from, fruits, vegetables, berries, tubers, some these whole grains. So yeah, I'll be probably getting something like 40 grams of fiber, in my opinion.
Nuts, no nuts, seeds, or
I have like a few. So in the morning, my first meal of the day is like a protein shake, or even like you can call it like a smoothie or like ice cream type thing. I put a protein powder and I blend it with frozen berries. It becomes like somewhat thicker. And with that, I'll have like a handful of walnuts. So maybe 5, 6 walnuts. Or on some other cases, it might be Brazil nuts or almonds. Maybe not almonds, not that much, but the walnuts are kind of, I think, one of the healthiest ones.
all right. So wait, so since we're on that, so then that's the first meal. Then the second, how many meals per day? How are you? What's the general day of eating look like?
Yeah, I'll have the protein smoothie or protein shake at 10 a.m. and I'll wait around maybe 2 hours, 3 hours. I'll go to the gym or go for a run, depends what day it is. And after that, I'll wait maybe 2 hours, cool down, go to the sauna, and I'll have a dinner. Right now, I've been having dinner at 4 p.m. In the past, it might have been at 5 p.m., but I've been reducing it to 4 p.m. I tend to like find it that it's better for sleep. Um, and that meal is usually, yeah, like as a carbohydrate source, it's either sweet potatoes or buckwheat, maybe some rice, not that often, but occasionally, and some sort of vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, peas, carrots, steamed usually. In some cases I'll have like beans, like black beans or kidney beans. with the protein source, it would be something like fish. I haven't been eating that much meat recently, but I'll have it like a few times a week, and or some eggs, maybe 2, 3 eggs. So I'll be getting, yeah, something like 90 grams of protein probably from the second meal, and from the first meal I'm getting 30 grams, 35 grams, something like that. And as a last meal of the day after the main course, I'll have either some cottage cheese or some Greek yogurt with some berries or nuts or something like that.
At what time is that?
And that's pretty much immediately after the meal. So it's somewhere around 5 p.m.
And then that's it. No more eating until what time is bedtime?
I'll go to bed usually between 9:30 and 10:30.
So then you're up what time?
I'm up at between 6 and 7.
So no eating for the first 3 hours as soon as you wake up?
No, yeah.
And that's on purpose, or why? Why? What's the rationale?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this way of eating for 6 years or something like that. Uh, I've always liked intermittent fasting. It's always felt easy and kind of effortless. So, yeah, breakfast for me just kind of feels like a bit of like not slows me down, but it's just kind of a time sink. You have to like make something, so I'll much rather like have something quick. Takes me like 2 minutes to make that protein shake drink, and then I'll be doing work or something else during those hours. So I'll spend only 30 minutes of the day actually preparing the meal, or even less, like 20 minutes.
So it sounds like when you're up between 6 and 7, you don't want to eat because it gets in the way and it slows you down. So then you're just getting work done. Like as soon as you wake up, the wheels start turning and you're just getting work done for the next 3, 4 hours. And then it's like, all right, I'll take a break and drink the smoothie.
Yeah, like I just like to work in the morning. So writing, researching something about content and those kind of things, emails. So yeah, that's what I'll do in the immediately after waking up.
So
I might
tea.
have,
Yep.
yeah, I'll have tea or coffee maybe. Drink some mineral water. But yeah, I mean, I'm not really hungry even within those hours. So I don't, yeah, like feel the need to have anything.
So, all right, wait, what kind of tea? Black, green, other kinds of tea? What kind of tea?
I like green tea, so I've always liked the green tea. Sometimes it might be also this chamomile tea, or there's one of these like spicy teas as well that I've liked, has like cardamom and those kind of things, some sort of Indian spice tea.
So that eating pattern and that those foods, is it consistent from day to day? I mean, I know that you course correct based on strength and how you look and all that, but is the stuff that you're including in a diet pretty consistent day to day, week to week?
Yeah, like like I said, I've been following this meal timing pattern for 6 years, and during that time window, I have like changed some of the foods. I've eaten more meat based, I've eaten more carb based, etc. So those decisions come mostly from like blood work decisions.
Gotcha. All right. So a big part of that approach, though, is satiety, right? Because
Mm.
it's hard for most people. You say you eat until you're full, but for someone like me, I'm a volume eater. I that could go 6, 7, 8,000 calories. So, on 2,000 to 2,500 calories, you've got to be satiated, right? Otherwise, it's very easy to eat just a couple hundred calories over, and then before you know it, you've got more body fat, and then you've got to course correct, and it's this vicious loop. So, I'm
Mm.
guessing that on your approach, satiety is like almost 100%, where you almost never want to stray from it. And then if you do, I don't know, do you include cheat meals or cheat days or junk or some desserts? How
Mm.
often do you do that? Like, what's your thinking around that?
Yeah, I'm like pretty much always satiated. I don't remember really like a time where I was like, oh, I'm like super craving for something like that, or I'm super like ravenous. Of course, I might get hungry every once in a while, but nothing like super ravenous, and I'm always kind of satiated after meals. So it might be something something to do with, I don't know, microbiome or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, like I do have some like quote unquote cheat meals or something like that. The most common one is just like some ice cream. I'll have like some of this sugar-free ice cream like Halo Top or Nix or something like that that's very low in calories and tastes like regular ice cream. I might have some regular ice cream as well sometimes that has like some sugars. So I'm not like super like strict about my diet. It's just most of the time I'll end up eating the same old that I typically eat. And yeah, I mean, I haven't noticed that having certain of these cheat meals or something would worsen my blood markers. So it might be because I'm exercising a lot, but even then, like I like to joke that, you know, all the centenarians, if you look at them, they all eat ice cream. That's kind of an interesting pattern that all the 100-year-olds, they're like, oh, I have ice cream every night. So I do think that ice cream is pretty healthy, or it's like at least the healthiest type of dessert, one of the healthier ones, especially if you have like less sugar.
But that's a potentially double-edged sword, right? Because then if it's
Mm,
at every meal and you're not satiated because it's not a whole food, it's pretty processed, then it's like, all right, I want to eat this all the time, and then it's hard to stay on track. So what's the frequency of, or it's just feel. It's like I feel like eating a little bit today, but then what's the frequency for the next cheat meal?
mm.
What's that general routine look like? Once every 3 days, every day, once a week?
Right. Well, I think depends on the person. Like, you know, some people they can have, yeah, like literally one scoop or like a one some sort of a small cup of ice cream and just ignore it, or they can like have one square of chocolate and then they'll be fine with it. Whereas others, yeah, like I'm gonna eat the entire box of donuts. So people need to like know which kind of satiety profile they are. I personally, I've uh, I've been both in the past, or like I've been in periods where I'm able to just take one bite and ignore it, whereas in other periods of yeah, like I'm gonna eat the entire box and and that's it. But I think yeah, like currently, like I don't feel like I'm so sort of yeah like super craving for these kind of things. Um, I do have maybe like twice a week or something. I'll have like some ice cream, but it's usually yeah, like I'll have either one of these cones is what you call, or like a small cup. So, you know, yeah, I don't think, I guess that the dose is what really matters. Yeah, like of course, if you, so what I like to say is like, okay, if you eat one potato chip every day for the rest of your life, you know, chances are it's not gonna have any significant effect on your longevity. If you eat 100 potato chips every day for the rest of your life, then it's very likely that you'll be slightly more overweight and with slightly worse blood markers, and you'll probably like die sooner. So, okay, where's the sweet spot between zero or between 1 and 100? So it's probably, you know, depends on the person. Some people it's 5, 10. Some people it's 25. I don't know, like, you know, maybe yeah, like over 30, it's probably gonna be too much. So yeah, it's always the matter. It's always in the dose. And for weight loss and body composition, then the calorie intake is still the most important factor that determines weight loss or weight gain. So, you know, I've experimented it with myself as well, that I can lose weight and gain weight as well on both a low carb and a high carb diet. So the macro ratios are secondary to the actual calorie intake, and the health effects are secondary to the body composition changes. So your body composition will worsen first before your blood markers will worsen, in my opinion. So if you're starting to gain weight, then you can be pretty sure that your blood markers will also like worsen. But if you're lean and you're not overeating calories, you're not gaining weight, then it's less likely that your blood markers will also worsen. So you have, you know, I don't know what the percentage would be. So I would suggest that maybe like 5 to 10% you can get away with like less optimal foods. And how big is it? Is it more on the side of 5 or is it more on the side of 10? Depends on the person and their, you know, fitness and age and metabolic health.
So I agree 100% that calories are the essential. It's probably the biggest part of the equation, and then balancing out how much junk to enable you to be able to stick to, the lower calories and be lean and have almost no visceral fat. Right? That's maybe the biggest part of all of it, right? But there may be some nuance, because what if you've got a pro athlete who's eating nothing but pizza and ice cream
Mm,
and literally has no other nutrition? So their performance may be good and they're satiated and they can just burn it off, but are they getting the nutrients that they need to optimize kidney function and inflammation and all of the things, right? So, and you may not see it if they're not measuring it, right? So,
for sure.
I think it's more than just the calories. You got, obviously got to pay attention to the biomarkers. So, but it sounds like you don't have any issues with this at all, where it's just course correct, don't have to track it,
Mm.
which is like a gift in some ways, right? Because I think most people can't do that, right? More people than ever are overweight or obese, and they're probably not tracking. So it's an incredible challenge and difficult for most people to have optimal body composition, just kind of winging it. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like, I have done the hard work many years ago, like 10 years ago. I was tracking calories and macros. So I did it for a few months. And, you learn a lot about it. You learn actually how much certain foods have in terms of the macros and the calories. And you like, develop the skill of, okay, this meal approximately has this much. Eventually you're not gonna even think about that, but the kind of steps should be that in the beginning you track everything, you weigh everything, then eventually you'll wean off from it slightly. You'll be kind of eyeballing it, in your head or in some sort of a calorie tracker. You'll, look at the food, put it in the tracker, you'll see the numbers and try to stick to those within those ranges, but you're not like weighing it. And then the next step is, yeah, like you're kind of being somewhat mindful and conscious about it, but again, you're not even tracking it. And then the final step is, yeah, like you eat whatever you want, kind of, and intuitively or habitually just stay in the optimal intake, or like a kind of decent intake with the calories and macros.
Yeah, that's what works for you, right? So
Mm,
for me, I've tried that approach. It doesn't work. I have to physically track everything, and even just eyeballing it, it's not, but it's you got to find what works for you, right? That's the bottom
for
line.
sure.
So, all right. So
Yeah.
you mentioned you cut protein by 20 grams. Why the protein cut?
I think the biggest reason was that based on the research, it's you need much less than you think. So the 150, 60 grams that I was aiming for, I think, let me just quickly calculate my weight in the pounds.
What's your body weight in kilograms?
It's 77 right now. So that's 169 pounds. So a lot of the research, or a lot of people say that, okay, aim for this 1 gram per pound of body weight, which for me would have been something like 170 or 165 grams of protein. But the research shows that you get the maximum benefits from muscle growth, or they peak at 1 point or at 0.8 grams per pound, or 1.6 grams per kilogram. So you
Yep.
need actually much less for maximum muscle growth than a lot of people suggest. So I felt that, okay, I don't need to eat that much protein, so there's no reason for me to do that. So I'm just gonna reduce it to this 130, 40 grams, which would be the 0.8 grams per pound for me. So yeah, and I didn't notice any like loss in performance or loss in muscle mass either. I actually did the DEXA scan somewhat when I was eating the more protein, and in July I did the second one when I had been eating less protein, and I actually gained 0.2 kilograms in the appendicular lean muscle mass index, so like the muscle in the arms and
Right.
legs.
Yep.
So actually I gained muscle eating less protein, and actually, and while at the same time having lost like 5% body fat as well, which is actually the best result that could be, that you lose body fat, then you build a small amount of muscle tissue. So yeah, I think many people overemphasize the idea of protein. You need much less than you think. Yes, you want to get something like 0.7 to 0.8 grams per pound of body weight for protein every day, but that already maximizes the muscle growth benefits. And if you eat like 1 gram per pound, then it's kind of overkill. If you're very overweight, then I would like suggest that, yeah, a much higher protein like that, so something like 1 gram per pound, would be more optimal, because first of all, protein is very satiating. So if you're overweight, you want to promote satiety, and yeah, protein makes you eat less overall. and you also burn a lot of calories digesting protein. So if you're eating something like 200 grams of protein, then a lot of it goes to digestion, and you waste it for and you waste that energy. So you're not storing that. So yeah, but if you're leaner and more physically active, then from my own experience, then you need much less than you think.
Yeah. So there's another variable in that equation, which is blood urea nitrogen. So, it seems like that's the hot topic on, eat more protein. And that may be true for some older adults who barely struggle to even get 0.8 grams per kilogram,
Mm.
right? So making sure they get at least that minimum may be important. But once we get into like, 150, 172 grams per kilogram or more. So if blood urea nitrogen is high, assuming normal kidney function, so, protein has nitrogen. So if you're not using it, the body's going to deaminate, take off the nitrogen groups and form urea. So that may not seem like a big deal, but urea increases during aging, in part because kidney function declines during aging, right? So that may not seem like a big deal, but
Mm.
urea can degrade. So if urea is circulating, elevated levels of urea are circulating, the gut is, it has vasculature, so it receives that blood supply. Urea can degrade the tight junctions in the intestine, so which means that more stuff from the lumen can leak into the blood. Now you've got stuff that activates inflammation. So I'm not saying very high protein diets will be bad for inflammation. It depends on the individual. It depends on what your data shows. If someone's eating 2 grams of protein per kilogram or more, and their blood urea nitrogen is relatively youthful at 12, 13, 14, not a problem. But bun increases during aging. So, this whole drive of eat more protein, you know, for the people who are having a hard time getting enough, I think it's important. But like you
Yeah.
said, it's most people get more, or most active minded people, as long as they're getting that 1.6. How much above that is very debatable. And I'd argue there are a lot of mechanisms that, may not be good.
Yeah, for sure. Like, why take the risk if there's no benefit?
Yeah.
So that's what I like to think a lot, that, high protein diets usually don't like cause kidney disease in otherwise healthy people, but you don't know what it might do to your. So if you eat, yeah, like a two 2 grams per pound for decades, are your kidneys going to be suboptimal once you're 80 or 90 years old? So like, do not take that risk. Then okay, eat just that much as is needed, and not more than that.
I wasn't presuming that the very high protein intakes cause kidney disease.
Yeah,
That
yeah, I
could
know,
be
I
many
know.
factors there, but knowing that kidney function declines during aging and any excess that your body doesn't need for the protein, it's going to be deaminated and forming urea. And knowing that elevated blood levels of urea, potentially either in conjunction with poor kidney function leading to the elevated urea, that degradation of the tight junctions, it's a potential disaster, i.e.
Mm,
too much protein being a disaster for, systemic health. There's
yeah.
another side of this equation too, which is um, gastric output. So stomach acid production and pepsin levels can decline during aging. And I say can because some studies show a decline, other studies don't show a decline. And that's potentially important because if you can't digest and absorb that protein in the small intestine, so we get the protein in the blood and, get, muscle protein synthesis and all the things that protein is good for, more of it will reach the colon where it's fermented by gut bacteria to produce quote unquote deleterious metabolites that can indeed impact not just kidney function, but the heart, the vasculature, the brain. So, but most people aren't measuring these things, right? So they just think, oh, I'm eating a very high protein diet, I'm good. But
Mm,
what did the biomarkers show, right? So,
yeah, yeah. Interestingly, I think with plant-based proteins, you don't see those negative effects that often as with animal-based proteins. That this protein fermentation as well is less likely to happen with the plant proteins. So yeah, like if you're eating higher amount of plant proteins, then that appears to be safer, whereas a higher amount of animal protein typically tends to be worse in the studies,
yeah,
at least.
yeah, 100% agree. The only caveat is like, as you know, egg and meat, their what is it, the biological activity or their ability to do muscle protein synthesis is higher than plant protein, right?
Mm,
So
for
now
sure.
you've got
So
this
you need
balance
less.
between you want to keep the protein away from the fermentation by the gut, but now, it's like how much meat, how much animal products versus how much plant-based protein. Like there's that
For
balance.
sure.
Nobody's thinking about this. It's just eat more protein. But yeah,
Yeah.
these are all variables in the equation.
Yeah. And if you are eating animal-based proteins, then you need actually much less So you wouldn't so you wouldn't need like 1 gram per pound of animal protein. If you're eating 100% animal protein, then you could probably get the same effect from just 0.7 grams per pound. But
Right.
if you are eating plant-based proteins, then you need a little bit more, like 20 to 30% more. So if you're eating plant-based proteins, then you might need like up to 1 gram per pound for the maximum protein synthesis effects.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. So exercise, right? So how often, for how long? How do you decide which days? What are your thoughts on the optimal duration for you? Like I know the published studies and it's, most of it, it's in the book or almost all of it's in the book. I mean, 8,000 references. I can't imagine how you left any stone unturned. But outside of the published studies, like, that people can get in the book, the Siim workout plan,
Mm,
how did you settle on where you currently are? And what are your
right.
thoughts for frequency, duration, all that?
Yeah. So I've changed my workout plan quite drastically over the last 2 years, something like that. In the past, between the ages of 18 and 28, I was pretty much doing only strength training with walking. I was at the gym or at doing calisthenics, whatever, maybe 4 to 5 times a week, resistance training. And but yeah, like based on the research, which is why I changed some of my workout plan, then doing like an even split of cardio and resistance training appears to be better for long-term health. So right now I'm doing resistance training 3 times a week, and I follow like a push-pull leg split. So workout day number one, I'll do pushing muscles. So let's say bench press, shoulder press. Workout day number two, I'll do leg muscles, so squats, maybe this stiff leg deadlifts. And workout day number three, I'll do pulling muscles, so pull-ups or these rows, barbell rows or deadlifts as well. So yeah, this covers the entire body. And I think that's, for me at least, that's the kind of optimal amount of resistance training that I found, while at the same time also doing cardiovascular exercise. So yeah, if I was to work out 6 times a week with weights, then it would be maybe somewhat of a different protocol. But I've always kind of followed this idea that cycle between the main muscle groups. And I like to do the main compound lifts because it's the most kind of time efficient way to exercise or to lift weights. And it's also like more functional. So you're, targeting more strength. So I wasn't like really interested in muscle mass like a bodybuilder. I've wanted to be more like stronger. So like a more powerlifting approach. And with that, by focusing on strength, you also build plenty of muscle mass. So it's kind of, you get both, the best of both worlds. And the compound exercises, the multi-joint exercises like bench, deadlift, squat, rows, they're just like the best fit in my
Over,
experience for that.
overhead,
Overhead
over-
press, I like that a lot. So, and this was like the first workout plan that I did when I was 18 years old, 17 years old. This 5x5 strong lifts program, which has their own like exercises, but it's also the main just compound lifts. So you don't need to do like dozens of different exercises with machines. If you just do the bench press, you're targeting your triceps, your front delts, and your chest, etc. With rows, you're targeting the lats, your forearms and biceps, etc. So yeah, it just takes me like 30 to 45 minutes at the gym, and I'm pretty much done with that. So I don't spend like a lot of hours at the gym. Uh, Maybe 4 years ago, I did go through like a mini kind of like a bulking arc where I was trying to build more mass. And during that time, I did like longer workouts. I was doing maybe 1 hour, maybe even like a 1.5 hour at some time. And but that involved still the main compound lifts, but I was doing a lot of the accessory exercises as well for the hypertrophy. But nowadays, when I'm not focusing that much on the muscle mass and just focusing on strength and bone density, for example, then I do, like 2 exercises pretty much, in a given workout, 45 minutes, and that's pretty much it. Then with cardio, so I'm doing currently for the last month, I've been taking a break from cardio just to kind of, take a break from it. But before that, over the last year, I've been doing 2 to 3 zone 2 cardio workouts per week, which last 55 minutes on average. And the intensity is somewhat low, so it's not anything strenuous. It's kind of like a, easy jog. So I'm always like breathing through the nose. I'm not getting exhausted from it. I could do it for like 2-3 hours in a row. Yeah, it's been my main focus over the last year to build like this cardiovascular base. And then once a week, I'll do like a HIIT workout as well, some interval training. Now the HIIT workout kind of varies. I might do it once a week, or I might also do it like once every other week. So it's not like a staple in my program because I'm already like exercising quite a lot. So if I feel that okay, I've been being too, or I've been exercising too much already, then I'll just skip it. But if I do it, then I might replace one of the zone 2 cardio workouts with a HIIT program. And then usually I'll have one day of the week where I, don't do any exercise. So I might just go for a walk or something like that. And the HIIT program, the HIIT workout kind of fluctuates as well. But I'll typically do something like 4 intervals, each interval lasting somewhere between 2 to 4 minutes. And I like do like a rest interval or like a slow jog for as well, like 2 to 4 minutes in between those rounds. So I'll repeat it for 4 rounds.
So
And that's pretty much it for the interval.
wait, so the your HIIT training, you're doing 2 to 4 minutes all out sprint, like just hard run as hard as you can for those 2 to 4 minutes, and then it's 2 to 4 minutes of slow jog.
Yeah, like so well, you're not able to like go all out for in the entire 2 to 4 minutes because you're only able to sprint for less than 30 seconds usually. So it's like just a moderate pace, and I'm aiming for this 80 to 90% of my max heart rate. So I usually wear this polar heart rate monitor doing the cardio sessions, and I'm tracking my heart rate. So I'm aiming for the 80 to 90% of my max heart rate for those 2 to 4 minutes. And in the rest intervals, I'm reducing the heart rate to something like 50 to 60% max heart rate, and then I'll repeat it.
So you're purposely trying to train the 80 to 90% heart rate zone by doing it for
Mm,
that long. Because you could do it, I'm
yeah,
guessing you get to 80 to 90% within 30 seconds or less, right? And then you
yeah,
could just, right? So you're literally trying to train that as much as you can.
yeah, yeah. And it's also like a good metric because it can change, so to say, like you get fitter and then it can
Yeah.
increase, but you always like try to like you can also use like your rate of perceived exertion kind of, so like 80 to 90% of your rate of perceived exertion. So like 100% is that, yeah, like you're all out sprinting and you're kind of almost falling down, and 80 to 90% of that. So you can pace yourself according to that if you don't have a heart rate monitor. But the heart rate monitor is a very useful tool that I found, and it kind of you can see it, so you're more like accountable to yourself as well. So you're not gonna cheat. Like you're not gonna I'm gonna go a bit slower this time, because I mean this interval is pretty brutal. It kind of takes you out of breath, but it's also very effective for VO2 max. And I lost a lot of visceral fat as well during that time. So I went from like pretty good visceral fat of 350 grams to 50 grams, which is I don't know if it's too low, but I wasn't planning to get it that low. It just happened. So, and one of the biggest changes to my workout plan was I was doing the intervals, and there is research that the HIIT intervals are very good for visceral fat reduction as well.
Nice. So the total hit, you said how many? 4 rounds. So 2 to 4 minutes on, 2 to 4 minutes off. So at most 8. So it's about a 30 minute at most, 15 to 30
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah. At maximum, it's like 32 minutes. And if I'm doing shorter intervals, then it's usually because I'm feeling a bit tired. I'm gonna take it easier, so I'll do shorter intervals. So I'll do still something, and uh, the first interval is obviously always the hardest, but the subsequent intervals usually feel pretty good.
All right. So day one push, day two legs, day three pull, day four hit or zone two, or is it
And no,
day
no,
five?
no, like I'm alternating between. So like Monday is push, Tuesday is zone 2, Wednesday is legs, Thursday is either rest or zone 2, Friday is either rest hit or zone 2, then Saturday might be pull. Sunday is either rest, zone 2, or hit, depending, yeah, what I did before.
So 5 days combined weights and cardio, or 6, 5 or 6
Yeah,
days.
five or six, yeah.
All right, and then wait, so take it back. So so in the strength training workouts, you said you're doing, for example, 2 exercises on that Monday for the push.
Hmm.
So I mean, I guess I'm guessing you're resting in between sets because it's not like a circuit training based thing. So it's
Right.
just taking your time and or do you have set goals where it's like, all right, I'm going to be in there for 45 minutes. I'm going to do 15 sets. Like, how do you think about within workout?
Mm. Yeah, I don't like have a goal, okay, 45 minutes. And sometimes I'm time constrained, so then I'll only have 45 minutes or something. But sometimes it might be 50, 55 minutes as well. Depends, yeah, how much I rest between the sets. So my strength training program is something I'll pick 2 main compound lifts. So for the pushing, their bench press or the incline press, which is kind of the same, it's just a different angle. Uh, and the second exercise would be like an overhead press or some seated dumbbell shoulder press. So kind of the horizontal plane and the vertical plane. I'm always kind of training both in the same workout. So the horizontal plane, horizontal push exercise would be the bench press, and the vertical would be the shoulder press. For the pulling muscle, the horizontal would be the barbell row,
Yep.
and the vertical would be the pull up or something like that.
You could
So
even lean back and do kind of like an, incline.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can do it for in many ways, yeah, but kind of the main
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, directions. So yeah, 2 exercises, and I'm aiming for something like 4 to 6 reps with those compound exercises. 4 to 6 reps is my working weight typically, and I'll warm up to the weight, do 4 to 6 reps for. Typically, I'll try to aim for 3 sets. So the warm up sets don't count. When I'm warming up with the bench press, I'm gradually increasing the weight slightly every set as a warm up. That takes me to something like 5 minutes, maybe less. Uh, and then 4 to 6 reps for 3 sets. And I'm typically resting something like, I try to rest, like as long as I need to, but it's gonna be something like 3 to 4 minutes. So I'm not trying to get like a cardio workout with strength training. I'm trying to apply the maximum amount of mechanical tension, which is the biggest driver of muscle hypertrophy. And you can achieve that with many different rep schemes. If you have like lighter reps, you're doing like 10 to 12 reps, then you just need to go to closer to failure. 1 to 2 reps is like very close to your 1 rep max, and it's gonna be harder to you would need to do like 10 sets of something like that to reach sufficient amount of volume with that. But 4 to 6 reps 3 times, at least I find that it's a pretty decent amount of volume that is good for muscle growth and strength development as well.
So,
And yeah.
so I was just going to say, so what are your thoughts on, like, I get circuit training based approach. You'll potentially limit your maximum strength increases,
Mm,
right? Because it's hard to have all out effort if you're doing 4 to 6 reps on a bench press and then 4 to 6 reps on a row, right? On a dumbbell row, whatever, the pull rows, right? So, but you're getting the cardiovascular stimulus. Your heart rate is staying elevated. Granted, it may not get to 80%, but in
mhm.
terms of biggest bang for the buck, you could argue that maybe you don't have the maximum strength, you don't have the maximum cardio, but you're getting the kind of the best of both worlds there. So,
Mm.
like, no thoughts on, or what are your thoughts on circuit training based, approaches?
Yeah, I think they definitely work. And for people who have like not who have like let's say less time or something, then it can be for sure like a good trade-off. And it depends on your goals as well. If you don't want to be, yeah, like you said, you don't want to reach your maximum strength and you don't want to reach your maximum cardio, then it's a good trade-off. You know, I like the idea that the man that catches 2 rabbits or chases 2 rabbits catches none. So I like to be okay in the strength training workout. I'm gonna focus only on the strength. I'm not gonna even try to break a sweat. Like usually I don't, yeah, like get sweaty doing that. Um, and with the cardio workout, I'm training only cardio. So I feel like okay, if you have the single focus, then you'll reach the better results. But you will have to like have separate workouts for that. So I'm not usually doing cardio after strength training either because of that reason. So I'm only having a strength day workout and a strength day and a cardio day separately.
So your cardio day, you said, is on day 2, but then you're training legs, with squats. But deadlifts are day 3 or day 2?
It's on day 3, yeah, like Wednesday.
Yeah, but day 2 squats. So you're doing, 55, 60 minutes of running, which is, I mean, granted, it's type 1, type 2A muscle fibers, whereas you're working the type 2, 2Bs, 2Xs when you're doing squats. But there has to be some element of fatigue going from day 2 into day 3, right? So wouldn't that limit overall strength gains with the squats and all the other, leg movements?
I haven't like noticed that like I don't get like sore or anything from any of my workouts really, unless I take like a break. So yeah, like the first workout after not having worked out that muscle for 2 weeks is gonna feel like sore the next day. But if I'm in my regular routine, then I don't get sore from cardio. Like I could do cardio even every day and still work out with weights. It will be a lot more like central nervous fatigue
Yeah.
that could be the limiting factor. So if you're just overtraining every day, then yeah, your central nervous system will be the limiting factor for strength. But I haven't experienced that, like because zone 2 cardio for me is not, it's not supposed to be intense. Like you're supposed to be doing it, or you're supposed to be able to do it for many hours every day, pretty much, if you do it the right way. So I'm not even, yeah, getting my heart rate super elevated. It's like in the low 100s, 120, 130, something like that.
Yeah, but it's just the general fatigue, whether it's central or just type 1, type 2A muscle fiber fatigue that may limit, or maybe that helps you recruit more muscle fibers when you're doing your leg workouts. If there is some just general leg fatigue when you're doing, strength
Mm,
training the next day, maybe that actually helps. But you're adapted to it. I think most people, they'd be, can't do, even though it's a relatively easy workout for you, you've adapted to it. Whereas a 55-minute cardio workout, I can't imagine most people are training legs the next day. Maybe the other way around, where they train legs on day 1 and then do
mm.
the 55-minute zone on day 2, because it's like you're not really training for performance zone 2. It's just kind of like an easy run, right? So
Right. Yeah,
you
I
got,
mean, there is research that this active recovery is better for like performance. So yeah, like if you train legs and the next day you go for like a even like a jog or some easy cycling or something, then that appears to be like better for recovery than just being, sitting. uh, so any movement, like light movement, is good for recovery, this active recovery. But yeah, you could easily overdo it. But I've been doing it, yeah, for, I've been lifting for 12 years and I've been, yeah, pretty much exercised a lot. So my body is very like adapted to it for sure.
and then what about using like HRV or resting heart rate? Are you still tracking that, or do you have enough data year to year where you can see changes in avoiding age-related declines for HRV and avoiding the age-related increase up to around 50 for resting heart rate? Still tracking that?
Yeah, like this one I've been tracking, yeah, pretty consistently over the last 4 or 5 years. And I mean, it's pretty much the same as it was. So I mean, it might have improved slightly. I don't recall exactly the number off the top of my head when I started tracking it, but back in 2019, something like that, it was still, yeah, in the low 40s. My resting heart rate nowadays, it's something like 38 to 40. So it's slightly better, and my HRV is kind of same. It's been yeah, like 100, over 100 the entire time.
Nice. So are you expecting to keep those data there as long as you're consistent with the workouts, or do you think there'll come a time when the workouts, even though you'll be consistent, at some point maybe HRV starts to dip, resting heart rate starts to increase? If so, what would you do in that situation?
Mm.
Or it doesn't matter. HRV, resting heart rate doesn't matter.
No, I do think that they're important for sure. Like, I mean, yeah, for sure will be some age-related changes, at least based on what we know about aging and in the studies as well. You see heart rate increases and HRV decreases with age. I think, first of all, I would take like a mini break. So it might be that because even now, every once in a while, my heart rate goes to 44, HRV goes to 89 or something. So that could be that just, yeah, I need to sleep a little longer, take like a few days off. So I'll do it and it kind of normalizes. So there's always like those things, small things that need to be first, like, okay, taken into account. So is it, maybe there's something in the diet, maybe you're getting some sort of a cold or infectious kind of conditions, whatever it is, to first like address those before making any conclusions. But yeah, theoretically, so if my HRV begins to tank and my heart rate begins to increase with everything like being the same, then Paul, yeah, I would first try it out and see, okay, is exercising less going to improve those numbers again? And then make like adjustments according to that. So and even then there might be like, okay, we don't know which one is more important. Like, okay, is it more important to have this low resting heart rate and high HRV versus is it more important to keep exercising? So I guess we don't know that data. So at that point, it comes down to, okay, which one you choose, which option.
So I wouldn't necessarily suggest exercising less in that case, right? So I'm guessing that you'll be able to best resist age-related changes for HRV, resting heart rate, and whatever other biomarkers, muscle mass, visceral fat, right? With consistency of training over a long period of time. But if you did start to see some dip, knowing you're consistent with the exercise, like you said, is it infection? What's the cause? And then maybe you actually get closer to some kind of root cause of quote unquote aging in your case, which would lead to immune activation and overstressed, which is what the lower HRV and higher heart rate, resting heart rate. So ideally, you could probably catch that sooner because you're paying attention to it. And it may not necessarily have to do with exercise dose, right? So I wouldn't want you to cut down on the dose. It's a matter of what's that underlying factor that's limiting your ability, right? Because then you're in that vicious cycle, right? All right, I cut my exercise dose, my data goes back, but now is that going to be bad long term? Because I've cut my exercise dose and that is below my peak fitness, right? So now you're on that slow decline, trying to
Yeah.
optimize it, as opposed to what's the root underlying that HRV, resting heart rate, and that's probably independent of exercise as long as you're consistent with that over time, right? So I don't think
Yeah,
anybody's thinking about it like that too. It's
for sure. Yeah, and I think that there's also like a certain reserve that you have. So like for me, like my heart rate is right now 38, 40, but 45 would be also excellent. Like, there's actually like no data that 40 would be better than 45, not that I've seen. And with HRV as well, like, okay, is a HRV of 150 better than 120 versus 95? Like, we don't know that either because they're like so out of the normal in that sense. So yeah, maybe if it goes from 120 to 95, I mean, that's still super good. And your heart rate goes from 38 to 48, then that's still like pretty good. So yeah.
pretty good based on the average person, but you versus you, I mean, or it just doesn't matter to you, right? As long as you're in the quote unquote, what's, really good, it's good enough for you versus there is an age-related change. It's not my best, but I'm okay with that, right? For me, things changing during aging and, those are dirty words to me, but how do you see that?
Yeah. Um, Hard to say. Yeah, like it would be for me, yeah, like a heart rate of 48 would be bad, or not bad, but it's kind of heading in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So I would definitely try to okay make some different adjustments to my diet or exercise, sleep, etc., to try to get it back down to normal. But if someone else is going from 45 to 48, then that for them might not be that big of a deal.
Yeah. All right. So let's go the two more important, not more important, but also as a part of the optimizing the base, right? So sleep and supplements, right? So
Mm.
do you have like a sleep hygiene approach, or it's just I sleep when I'm tired? How do you think about sleep optimization?
Yeah, sleep is obviously very important, and I have like a pretty simple sleep routine. So a few key things that I try to follow. So I try to like minimize this bright light in the evening, bright artificial light. So instead of having like this blue and kind of ceiling lamps, I use like a pink Himalayan salt lamp in the bedroom, or I might have some like red light bulb, like something like this.
Do
It's
you know
just
the
like
wavelength, nanometers?
no, it's a regular light bulb, but it's red.
Ah,
So
ah,
like yeah, it has the red light wavelengths, but something like that. And then I'll wear like some of the blue blocking glasses or something like that as well to kind of if I'm using like my smartphone to look at something, then I'll wear the blue blocking glasses, and that's kind of useful. Now, is it super mandatory to wear the blue blockers? I don't think it's like the first thing that matters. The consistency of the bedtime is probably or like, first thing is make sure you get to the 7 to 8 hours, and then the consistency of going to bed around the same time on a regular basis. Those are the most important parts. And what I found is, yeah, dimming down the lights is kind of good for my sleep as well. That helps to wind down easily. And for example, if I'm recording something late, like a podcast, not today, but on some days it's like at the 9 p.m., which is like one hour before my bedtime, then I do feel that like this kind of very bright light does keep me up a bit longer if I do that. So yeah, I mean, there's some research about the blue blockers being useful for insomnia and sleep, and from a like mechanistic perspective, then the bright lights do suppress melatonin. And in my opinion, like melatonin is one of the like primary anti-aging hormones. So not only for sleep, but also as an antioxidant and regulator of these other systems in the body, like glutathione and autophagy and those kind of things. So I don't want to like, suppress my melatonin in the evening before bed when you're supposed to have the highest amounts of melatonin. So yeah, that's kind of what I kind of do. Um, Food intake, I stop eating, yeah, something like 5 hours before bed. I've noticed that it's good for my sleep. If I, eat a large dinner too close to bed, then my deep sleep is slightly lower, and it takes me a bit longer to fall asleep. But if I go to bed slightly hungry, then I get like super good deep sleeps. And in the morning, I wake up between 6 to 7, but yeah, like if I wake up too early, then I'm gonna feel a bit tired. So I ideally want to aim for, yeah, something like 7.5 to 8 hours per night for sleep. So that's when I feel like pretty the best with that.
Blackout shades? Are you paying attention to room temperature and humidity? Do you
Mm.
have bed cooling, like any of those?
Yeah, I do have blackout curtains. So in the winter months, it doesn't matter because you go to bed and wake up when it's dark outside anyway. But in the summer, the sun does rise pretty early here, so it rises even like 4 a.m. So even though I would have the blackout curtains, some of the light might come through. So I'll use like a sleep mask. That's like the best thing in the summer. So I'll use that. With like air quality, I just usually ventilate the room before bed, and in the morning I'd open the windows and let the wind in. There, I do have like some air filtration device as well. I might run that for 30 minutes, a few hours before bed, but I don't have like any specific like that. With cooling, I use this 8 sleep mattress. That's in the summer is definitely super good, because if it's too hot, then I don't really like. Yeah, one of the biggest things that mess up my sleep would be if it's too hot, or if it's like super bright lights immediately before bed. So yeah, like the cooling mattress is pretty good in the winter. I don't use it that much, but in the summer, definitely. With supplements, I take like a microdose of melatonin every once in a while, so like 0.3 milligrams, and I take glycine with my tea in the evening, so that's like 2 hours before bed, and I don't take any other like real sleep supplements. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
How much glycine?
Yeah, like I'm getting something like 10 to 15 grams of glycine per day, and in the evening with the tea, it might be 1 teaspoon. So that's like three grams, I guess. And I also put it like into my protein shake. So and maybe with the cottage cheese as well in the evening. So yeah, I'm getting at least 10 grams per day.
And that's based on the glutathione studies and glycine restoration, avoiding age-related decline.
Uh, yeah, partly. It's also with the methionine balance. So excess methionine and too low glycine status in animal studies are linked to shorter lifespans. Of course, in humans it's not possible to know that, but in humans they find that excess methionine and low glycine status also increases visceral fat, or it's associated with higher visceral fat. So yeah, I think you need glycine for many things like the glutathione synthesis, collagen synthesis as well. You need it for methionine and glycine balance. It also supports creatine synthesis. It's good for sleep, lowers blood sugar. So I think, most people just aren't getting enough glycine from the regular diet. So unless you are eating pork skin or pork rinds or pure gelatin desserts or just making jello yourself, then you're not really getting that much glycine. And chances are you're getting too much methionine if you're eating muscle meat and eggs and those kind of things. So yeah, I think most people would need at least like 3-5 grams. And personally, I think like 10 grams up to 10 grams is better.
All right, so glycine sounds like that's the dominant supplement in the approach. What else? Do you have any other? How many supplements? And then what's the top five?
Mm. Yeah, currently I'm taking quite a limited amount of supplements. I'm taking like 6 or 7, and they are glycine, collagen. So collagen separately because you only get 3 grams of glycine from 10 grams of collagen, and there's a lot of the studies that collagen peptides improve skin anti-aging and skin elasticity. So yeah, I'm using kind of for that reason. The third supplement is TMG, so trimethylglycine, and I take that for my homocysteine levels. So my homocysteine was slightly elevated. It was like 12. I started taking 2 grams of TMG and it dropped to 9. And yeah, I'm trying to see if I'm getting it closer to 5, which would be more optimal. And fourth supplement, creatine. I don't take creatine like every day, but I take it like 80% of the time. So creatine, obviously for muscle strength and muscle power. It also helps with some of the methylation. It's good for the brain. It's not necessarily useful for sleep, but it can counteract like sleep restriction or the negative effects of sleep restriction, and it can like I guess reduce sleep demand, so you're able to get away with a slightly less sleep. So yeah, it's one of the most like research supplements for sports performance specifically. I take that, and magnesium is the fifth one. So I try to maybe even like 400 milligrams of magnesium a day, sometimes less, but that's because magnesium deficiency is very common, and I'm just using that as more like insurance policy to like prevent any like magnesium deficiency. What else? Sixth supplement is omega-3s. So I'm taking 1.5 grams of EPA DHA combined, and the reason for that is to increase the omega-3 index. So it was 9%, which is above the optimal. But we'll see. Maybe 10, maybe it goes to 10%, but I'm not like really pushing it that hard. So 9% is pretty good. So over 8% is like the best optimal zone. And
So
the
when,
last up,
yep,
yeah,
yep, go ahead, go ahead. Last supplement.
yeah, last supplement would be melatonin. I don't take it every day, but a few times a week.
So in terms of what's optimal for the omega-3 index, I mean, you could technically look at if you have tracked biomarker data on the same day as omega-3 index, you could look at correlations, right? Because just because you have this reference range and what's considered high, in your case, is that significantly correlated with more biomarkers going in the right direction than wrong, right? And then if not,
Mm,
maybe it's not 10, 11%, maybe actually 8.4%, maybe best in your case, right? So
mm,
just an idea for that more titrated
for
specificity.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my biomarkers have improved as well while I've increased the omega-3s. But I've done things to my biomarkers that don't include the omega-3 supplement.
So what about weak spots? So you mentioned homocysteine and then taking TMG, but what do you have current weak spots, whether it's biomarkers, whether it's training? And actually, wait, before going there, going back to the training real quick. So what about, I'm guessing you're doing obviously full range of motion or I mean, the bench press is, touch the chest to the bar, ass to grass with the squats,
Mhm.
or is it 90 degrees? And then are you doing any flexibility training, mobility work, balance training, or is this just, you're doing a lot already, so you'll have higher than usual levels of all these things, but not
Mhm.
specifically training it.
Right. Yeah, I try to do full range of motion with most exercises. With the squats, it kind of varies if I'm doing the high bar versus the low bar squat. So if it's the low bar squat, then I'll go, yeah, like slightly below 90 degrees. So like, just the hips slightly below the knees. Um, and with that, the weight would be heavier. Whereas if I'm doing the high bar squat, then the weight would be lighter, but I would go deeper. So yeah, like glutes touching the calves.
Abs. Yeah.
So yeah, depends on a lot of the exercise. But bench press, I'll go full range of motion, rows, pull-ups, and yeah, with flexibility and stretching. Like I do some like easy stretching exercises, so like some like easy front splits. So I'm not I'm not as flexible as to do a front split right now because I'm not like directly training it, but I could get it in a few weeks if I were to train it. So I'm like decently flexible, but not like crazy flexible because I'm not chasing it specifically. So I do like some mobility exercises like every day. I'll try to get into the deep squat position even when I'm like checking my phone or playing with my dog or something like that. Like just take a moment to do some mobility at the same time. I try to do some of this knees over toes kind of exercises slightly, where you're like doing like a lunge with the knees going over the toes, so like a full range of motion. If I've been sitting a lot, like after driving or something like that, then I'll do the what's it called, the couch stretch or something, where you're stretching the front hip part. A few times a day, I'll do the touch the floor with the hands, stretch or touch your toes with the floors. Um, every day, I'll try to hang from somewhere to kind of decompress the spine and loosen the shoulder joints. So if I'm not even training pull-ups, then I'll still, hang from somewhere. Every workout at the gym, I'm hanging there for, a minute or two on the bar. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, I do a deep squat, I hang, a little bit stretching for the front split exercise, and yeah, I think that covers most of what I need without like specifically training for mobility and flexibility.
Totally underrated. I think flexibility, mobility. I mean, it sounds like you're doing a lot there, right? So you're good. But I think most people, especially in
Mm.
longevity, even health and fitness, pay almost zero attention to these things. And just using like the knees over toes as an example, I mean, the strengthening in the knee joint itself and the ligaments there, you're
Mm.
not, I mean, you'll get it from a squat, but by actively going knees over toes, I mean, it's a totally different feeling. Even doing like sissy squats. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm doing squats and deadlifts and lunges and doing the sissy squats. There's so much stress on the joint itself that it's got to get stronger and, more fit, right? So I
yeah,
think when you consider joint mobility in older age, I mean, you could make an argument that joint mobility may be a huge underlying factor in terms of the youthful gait and phenotype, right? Because if you can barely get off the floor because your joints are weak, even if your muscles are strong, you're going to look older, right? So
mm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's pretty underrated for sure.
yeah. All right. So weak spots. So do you have any weak spots right now that you consider weak spots, whether it's
Mm.
biomarkers or stuff you're trying to get stronger at in certain movements, or everything's good? You're you're just
Yeah, I mean, for sure, the homocysteine would be a weak spot. Well, not right now anymore. Has been like it's been normalizing. Um, but yeah, it's something that I'm like trying to optimize even more. Any other weak spots? I'm sure, yeah, like a lot of people, they like to point out some specific small things like, okay, your this marker isn't in the exact optimal range or something like that. But yeah, personally, I don't consider them like weak spots. So
like what?
yeah,
Like what? What
except
would
the homocysteine part, which yeah is improving.
which biomarkers would people think that yours aren't in the optimal range? I've seen your data. It's all pretty close.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's always some people who say, "Oh, your cholesterol is high or your cholesterol is too low." So you'll never be able to like satisfy everyone with that number. So even if my LDL is like 77, I mean that's pretty good. Uh, and even then, some people will say, "Oh, it should be 40," or or it's too low. Like your LDL should be 150 or something. Depends who asks. So I don't take like that kind of comments seriously because I've seen the data myself. I've looked at all the research regarding like what are the optimal ranges for these markers. So I'm like pretty happy with that. And the most important part is maintaining it. So right now it's relatively easy for me to do. The challenge is to do that in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So that's where the real like fun or the challenge
Yeah.
begins.
So LDL, it's inverse U, right? It's in terms of aging. So it's low in youth, peaks in midlife, and then it's low at an older age, advanced age. So for the people that are saying that it's too low, most of those studies looking at all-cause mortality risk are looking at people basically in their 50s versus people in their 80s. And
Mm.
clearly people in their 80s, I mean, it's the downward sloping thing, right? So how would you
Yeah.
know if you're on the lower side of youth or aged, right? Well, if your albumin's high and lymphocytes are high and inflammation is low, it's a part of the youth phenotype. You're good.
Yeah.
That's how I rationalize it. But I mean, more direct measures of atherosclerosis. I don't know if you're looking at like the ankle brachial index, which is a pretty good measure. Because if you have low LDL, but then you've got high lipoprotein A or you don't have high triglycerides, but high
Mm.
ApoB, it is possible to have relatively low levels of certain lipoproteins and higher levels of others that
Mhm.
are unmeasured. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the LDL is itself isn't the only thing that matters for sure. Like other lipoproteins, my LP little a is low. Fortunately, it's actually like 2.4. So
nice.
so that's like genetically determined. My ApoB is also pretty low. It's like again 73 or might be even lower than that. Maybe it was in the 60s or low 70s. So that's also like pretty low. So yeah, VLDL is low. So yeah.
So those are actually, if you look under the hood for Dunedin Pace, so Dunedin Pace was trained on 19 biomarkers.
Mm.
Besides VO2 max was one of them. So obviously you're good there, right? So I think it was what, over 60 more recently, right? So
66, yeah.
LDL so right. So you've got these 19 biomarkers, and then what's the epigenetic profile of people who had the quote unquote youthful data versus the age data? LDL was there, lipoprotein A was there, ApoB was there, so you're all good. I mean, that
Mm.
probably contributes. I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
it's VO2 max, the epigenetics related to that's contributing more. I don't know, but
Mm.
all those other markers
Yeah.
that are relatively low and on the youthful side, that's the argument against your data being too low.
Yeah, I mean, well, the too low argument, like you said, comes from the studies where low cholesterol was linked to higher mortality, but that's because they didn't account for things like malnutrition and cancer and frailty and those
Yeah.
conditions. So yeah, like if you're 80 years old, you're malnourished, you're underweight, your LDL will go down because of the malnourishment, and you die because of breaking a hip or something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you account for those, then low LDL isn't harmful at all. And especially in the younger age group of 18 to 45, uh, it's there's no this U-shaped association. Like it's kind of a linear almost.
So why do you think, going back to homocysteine, do you think that's maybe the first weakness in the chain in terms of it increases during aging?
Mm.
Uh, why do you think, is this the sign that, maybe methylation is one of the first things that may go wrong and you've got to actively work to reverse that?
Yeah, yeah. I think I might have something. Yeah, methylation related genetics or like shortcomings with there because homocysteine also I've seen it varies a lot between people. Joe Cohen is another person who has high homocysteine levels and he takes like a ton of different supplements to lower it, and it still isn't like optimal. Whereas you have some other people who even like take steroids and stuff, and their homocysteine is 5 after just taking a few of these methyl donor supplements. So and steroids will increase homocysteine. Whereas, me and Joe, so I've recently introduced some of these methyl donor supplements, so it's going down. So for me, it appears to work. So I just need to like measure it again, maybe change some of the supplements I'm taking, maybe increase B12 intake or something, increase TMG, whatever it is. But Joe, for example, he's taking already a lot of supplements, and his homocysteine is, I think, he's also like 9 right now.
But has Joe always, I mean, maybe it's a genetic issue in his case, but has it been lower in the past and now it was at 12 where it's increased during aging? Because that would argue against the genetic component.
It's always been something, yeah, like 11, 12, 13, something like that. As far as I can remember from my blood markers, or as far as I measured them. So for Joe, like he tracks everything pretty much as well, or he he has a very thorough understanding of his blood work over time. So for him, it's appears to be genetic. For me, I think it might fix more easily than for him, perhaps. But I'm gonna go measure it like next week after having taken slightly more TMG. So I'm gonna see if the higher dose of TMG, because in the clinical trials, 4 to 6 grams is what they've used with TMG for homocysteine. So I've been increasing it to 4 grams over the last maybe month, and I'm gonna see if it lowered the homocysteine more. But there's also the studies that TMG over 2 grams increases cholesterol. So I'm going to measure that again as well to see, okay, is there a trade-off? So then you need to kind of, okay, what's the trade-off?
Nice. So I don't know if it's specifically related to homocysteine, but there are gut bacterial enzymes that degrade, that remove methyl groups. One example being there are caffeine. So caffeine has methyl groups at 3 nitrogens. So
Mm,
there are caffeine demethylases that are the gut bacterial, that their activity increases with an increase in gut pH. So more alkaline gut. The gut becomes more alkaline during aging. So I don't
mm,
know if that's one reason why homocysteine would increase during aging, because you've got a lack of methyl donors, maybe because the gut gets more alkaline. I don't know if that's the case in your situation, but um, yeah,
that's
that's something
interesting
that's something
for
that's
sure.
top of my mind.
Mm.
All right, so let's all right, so let's get into some of the fun stuff. So like favorite movies, favorite music, what makes, what makes the scene tick?
Mhm. Right. Um, well, my favorite movies are probably like the Lord of the Rings movies, the trilogy. So like, I've always been like a fan of that kind of those kind of movies. Uh, I don't like watch a bunch of movies right now. Like I'm not like tracking new movies and then okay, I'm gonna go see them. I watched things like Dune when it came out. Yeah, like occasional few movies, but the my favorite genre is probably something like fantasy related, like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Dune, or those kind of things. Music wise, I like heavier music, so like death metal and those kind of things. Which yeah, I've liked since as a child almost. Like I think I started listening this music when I was maybe 13 or something like that. So yeah, 17 years ago. So over half of my life I've been listening to that. And yeah, I mean that's yeah, I other than that I like, play with my dog, spend time with my wife, and yeah, kind of I don't have any like specific hobbies besides like research and exercise.
Oh, wait, so I have another question that leads off of that. But wait, which death metal bands? Like is Metallica death metal? Rage Against the Machine,
No.
or how hard is, right?
Right. Well, I think yeah, like I mean metallic isn't heavy enough. So I like more like a new wave of this death metal. So like it's called actually deathcore, so it's not as like old school metal. But my favorite bands, something like Lorna Shore, Whitechapel, Signs of the Swarm. What else? Immortal Disfigurement is one. Yeah, like I mean, I can name a few more, but I don't know if you've even heard of them.
No, I'm gonna look them up though. Wait, and so do you listen to death metal when you're working out? What's the workout music?
Yeah, I mean, usually it's the death metal music. I might listen to some podcast as well when I'm working out. If I'm writing or working on the computer, then I'll listen to the music. If I'm taking a nap, I'll listen to the music.
But
So
death
I
metal, but is it exclusively death metal like during the workout, while writing, while researching, or is it some variance with other stuff too?
I mean, there are like some sub-genres of that. There's like metalcore, there's like post-hardcore or something like that. Uh, but they're all in the kind of same ballpark with that. So I don't like rap or EDM or acoustic music or something like that.
All right, so cool. All right, so then what doesn't the world know about you? Like Actually, and along those lines, so is making content related to longevity, is that the goal for as long as as long as you can or want to, or do you see other stuff that you're interested in that you'd be making content on? And then you said you have no hobbies, but like, are there things that interest you outside of 8,000 references, you know yeah, what are your thoughts about that?
Mm. Well, I studied anthropology in university, and I like, history. I like philosophy a little bit. I like just the human species, or like understanding human species. I pay attention to like politics a little bit, and I pay attention to culture and those kind of things, uh, and anthropology in general. So I like the idea of human evolution and advancing the human species. So that's why I'm interested in the longevity idea. That I think that's kind of the next step in the human evolution of, extending human lifespan. We're obviously not anywhere close to that yet, but I'm like interested in researching that, and I think it's the most interesting problem to solve. So like weight loss is relatively easy in terms of like the mechanisms and understanding how it works. But aging and longevity is much harder. Like we don't even know how it works yet completely. So that's why I'm like interested in it as like from an anthropological perspective of how do we actually extend human lifespan. And I think that's the future kind of for the human species in the next few century or beyond. And yeah, what no one knows about me, or like the future plans with my content as such, is I am planning to like evolve myself as well. I don't think I'll be staying only like as a content creator. I have like a few business ideas that I'm gonna work on with some people over the next few years as well. And it's kind of, but it's in the vein of this longevity and life extension area. So yeah, I mean the business part is like a mandatory part of this as well. You know, I don't consider myself like a researcher. Obviously, I'm not a scientist, but I'm not like some sort of I don't like to think of myself as some sort of a regular influencer either. So, but I do like to, yeah, like the idea of contributing to the field in some shape or form, and yeah, actually providing some sort of a service to people that would support their longevity in a more like meaningful and effective way in the future.
So that's indefinitely, it's, you see yourself continuing on that path for as long as you can, or there's, like you said, I heard you say about evolution, but are there, so
Mm.
let's assume that, there is no more death, there is no more aging. What are you doing then?
Mm. Well, I think I'll I would think about it when we actually reach that immortality. So like what do you do when you're immortal? Like let's first try to get immortality. I would say, but I mean, I would probably like spend. So if you have an infinite amount of time to do everything, then you would end up doing everything almost. Like you
I
know,
don't know, maybe not.
because you could travel everywhere, you could experience all the things in the world related to culture and adventures or something like that, to food, entertainment, like that. If you have infinite amount of time, so I would probably end up doing a lot of those kind of things. But I like my routine. I would exercise and kind of follow the same routines, even if there was like no health benefits to it almost. Like I like that kind of those activities. My wife is also similar, that we both are health conscious. We take care of ourselves, and yeah, we enjoy spending time together as well. So I would spend more time with my wife, doing different things, and yeah, experiencing the world. But right now I'm already super happy already. So yeah, I don't know if what I would change. If
For
there was like
me,
no mandatory need. So if you could just take, like in the future, you take a pill that gives you all the benefits of exercise and makes you live longer. I would still probably do some of my exercise. Like I would probably make it more fun. Like I would do bouldering, I would do, some maybe gymnastics exercises. So I would still do some form of like movement. Like I like to hike in nature. I like to do some cycling. That's kind of enjoyable for me.
Yeah, so I already know what I would do, but that's a story for another day. But I don't think, you were saying that you don't see yourself as just as an influencer, but not a scientist either, right? Or a scientist, a researcher either. I mean, that's a very debatable, you know, uh, tiptoe, right? So the reason I say that is, Harold Catcher, the E5, you know about this, where they took the plasma fraction from old rats. They're trying to give it to young as rejuvenation factors, right? So he just published
Mm,
like a short thing showing like some bad aging on one hand, and then he just happened to put on the other hand the E5, hey, let's see, right? And if you look at the two, one looks really young, his own hand, and the other doesn't, right? So let's assume he doesn't have the credentials, a PhD, right? And he posts something like that, which is literally preliminary data. It's not a study of 50 people or 1,000 people. So, I mean, I don't see it as this thing where you need to have, like, you physically or anyone else needs to physically have the credentials. If they're doing these interventions and they've tracked it in a, rigorously scientific way, whether it's 10 blood tests or 5 blood tests or whatever it may be, that's science. That's actual research, right? And I don't think you need to have the credentials. Granted, people who have the credentials probably would be more likely to be doing these things, but I
mm,
think we're in a different era where citizen science can be immensely powerful, and the credentials don't. There are plenty of people with credentials who don't train or take care of themselves, and good what good is that, right? So
mm.
um, so that's how I see it. I mean, I see it as preliminary data at the individual level that may actually ends up translating to the broad masses. So
Mm,
yeah, right about this influencer stuff, but the definition of what makes a scientist debatable, right? I see you in that
right.
vein. I don't think you could put together a book like that and not have that kind of rigorous level, understanding and training. So
Mm. Yeah, well, for sure. Like I also believe that, what matters, yeah, like is the actual message or the accuracy of what's said than rather like who says it.
yeah,
So I use X, the Twitter, and there's a lot of doctors from all different fields spewing nonsense about diet or whatever it is. So yeah, like it's not exclusive to regular people or influencers to spread misinformation. So like a lot of doctors also do it quite frequently. So yeah.
but not necessarily always purposeful misinformation. It could be just them looking at the data in a certain way, and then from whatever their background or bias may be, they've
Mm,
interpreted it in another way, right? So
for
that
sure.
that misinformation versus disinformation, unless it's actively intentional versus someone's interpretation of the data, and then that being interpreted as misinformation, disinformation, that's a very tricky slope. Like even when I hear politicians talk about these things where, hey, we're going to crack down on misinformation. Who decides? Like that,
Yeah,
that's a very subjective thing.
true. Yeah.
So, all right, some more fun stuff. So aliens are real, aliens make believe. What do you think? What do you think about that?
um, I mean, it's more likely that they are real than they're not, because the vastness of the universe, you know, even though like it requires such perfect conditions for life to emerge, then just the vastness of the universe, it almost makes it impossible that it wouldn't have happened somewhere else. I think there's a lot of different stages of evolution throughout the universe. Like there's planets with lower life forms than ours and higher life forms than ours. It's just that, yeah, the universe is so massive that it's very unlikely that there isn't any like other life out there, in my opinion.
Not just the universe, the galaxy, right? I mean, the
Mm,
galaxy, including all of the universes. But wait, you assume that, so the Earth is what? How many, 4 point something billion years old? Why couldn't they have evolved here and they're still here? Like, and just in line with that idea, 300 years ago, the idea that bacteria existed, nobody knew, right? And then, this scientist was studying under a microscope and saw this stuff. And then, 300 years later, we know that microbes are everywhere. We live in their world, right? So who's to say that at some point over the past 4 billion years, or maybe multiple points, rise and fall,
Mm,
some advanced civilization exists and have either cloaked themselves or live in the ocean. Who's to say they're not already here, right?
for sure. Yeah. I mean, we don't know that.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, okay. We covered it all, I think. Uh, so for everyone who wants to get Siim's book, it's at siimland.co. It's giant juggernaut of 8,000 references. So with that,
Yeah,
thanks.
it's
Yep.
currently on Amazon. Yeah, like I switched to the Amazon right now.
Cool. And you also do consulting, right? So people can, use your services to improve their health and potentially longevity, right? So anyway, thanks, Siim, for being on today.
Yeah, my pleasure. And yeah, always happy to talk with you.
Cool. All right. Ciao.